January 2026. The sky over London isn't just gray. It is heavy, pressing down with the weight of a revelation that has been 10 years in the making. Thousands of people are surging toward the Supreme Court of Justice, but they aren't there for a political debate or a celebrity divorce. They are there to witness the potential collapse of the modern British monarchy. Inside courtroom number 7, the air is so thick you could cut it with a knife. International journalists are crammed into every seat pens, hovering cameras ready, waiting for the moment that will change history. The tension is physical. It's suffocating. And then the doors open. He enters. Tom Bower. Silver hair, eyes like cold steel, a man who doesn't just tell stories, he dismantles reputations with the precision of a surgeon. When Tom Bower steps into a courtroom, the elite tremble because everyone knows his golden rule: he never strikes without ammunition, and he never accuses without irrefutable proof. But today, his target isn't a corrupt politician or a media mogul. His target is the very bloodline of the House of Windsor. Look at the spectator section. Prince Harry is sitting there, his shoulders hunched, his face drained of color. This is a man who has spent years fighting the press, claiming to protect his family. But today, his eyes are empty. Beside him, Meghan Markle grips her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles are white. The facade of the perfect victim is starting to crack. Because when Bower steps to the podium and utters two phrases, Trevor Engelson and Operation Cuckoo, the room descends into absolute chaos. What happens next isn't just a scandal. It is the exposure of a secret so dark the palace buried it for a decade. And you are about to hear every single detail. To understand why the walls of Buckingham Palace are shaking, you have to understand the man holding the sledgehammer. Tom Bower is not a YouTuber guessing in a basement. He is a former BBC journalist and a lawyer who has spent decades destroying the untouchable class. He wrote Revenge in 2022, a book that terrified the Sussex camp. But what he brought to this courtroom in 2026 makes that book look like a fairy tale. Bower stands before the judge, calm, collected, and terrifyingly precise. He isn't there to gossip about bridesmaid dresses or fights over lip gloss. He is there to present what he calls the timeline of deceit. He asks the court clerk to display a digital diagram on the massive screens. It's a timeline of Meghan Markle's life between 2013 and 2018. He calls this document the record of overlaps. The narrative we have been fed for years is simple. Meghan was a strong, independent woman who divorced her first husband, Trevor Engelson, and years later fell in love with a prince. A clean break, a fresh start. But Bower's evidence suggests that this story is a fabrication. Through verified hotel records, flight logs, and decrypted communication data, Bower paints a picture of a woman who never truly let go of her past while securing her future. The courtroom gasps as he reveals gaps in her schedule while filming suits in Toronto, gaps that align perfectly with the movements of her ex-husband. But here is where the story shifts from a celebrity scandal to a historical crisis. Bower isn't just claiming an affair. He is implying that the timeline of her relationships is so tangled that the paternity of the child who stands 7th in line to the British throne is a matter of legitimate legal debate. And he claims the palace has known about this for years. Why, Trevor? Why does a Hollywood producer matter to the British royal family? Because according to Bower's testimony, Trevor Engelson is the key to the entire mystery. He is the man who knew Meghan before the fame, before the tiaras, and according to Bower, he was the man who was still in the picture when the royal romance began. Bower presents the court with a theory that sends a chill through the room. He argues that in 2016 and early 2017, Meghan was playing a dangerous game of chess. She had the prince on one side, the golden ticket to global fame and power, but she allegedly kept Trevor on the hook as a safety net and exit strategy, in case the royal dream fell apart. It was a calculated move by a master strategist. But biology doesn't care about strategy. Bower drops the bombshell that has Harry freezing in his seat. He questions the frantic pace of the royal wedding. Why the rush? Why the desperate need to walk down the aisle in May 2018? Less than 2 years after meeting Bower, argues it wasn't just passion. It was panic. He suggests that a pregnancy timeline didn't align with the official royal narrative. If the conception happened during the overlap period, the Sussexes faced a fateful dilemma. Imagine the situation. You are about to marry into the most scrutinized family on earth. If the child you are carrying belongs to your ex-husband, the entire plan collapses. You lose the title, the money, the security. Bauer asserts that a choice was made, a choice to prioritize power over biological truth. And in that courtroom, looking at Harry's devastated face, you realize that he might be the only person in the room who didn't know. But that wasn't the whole story. The palace knew. And what they did about it is even more shocking. This is the part of the testimony that caused the judge to call for order. Bauer introduces the term Operation Cuckoo. It sounds like a spy movie, but he claims it was a very real, very secret protocol initiated by the late Queen Elizabeth II and her advisors. We all remember the birth of Archie in May 2019. The secrecy, the refusal to pose on the hospital steps, the doctors refusing to sign the standard birth announcements. We were told it was about privacy. Bauer says that was a lie. He claims that while the world was celebrating, a covert genetic test was conducted at Portland Hospital. The palace, suspicious of the timeline and the rumors swirling in elite circles, demanded certainty. So, where is that test result? This is the detail that will haunt you. Bauer claims the result was never destroyed. It was sealed in a chemically treated envelope and placed in a safe located in the deepest wine cellar of Buckingham Palace, a vault accessible only by the monarch and the highest-ranking security officials. Why hide it? If the test proved Archie was Harry's son, why not release it and end the rumors? The silence speaks volumes. Bauer argues the result confirmed the palace's worst fears: the child had no Windsor DNA. But in 2019, the monarchy was already on the brink. Prince Andrew's scandal was exploding. The Queen was aging. The firm decided that revealing a paternity fraud in the direct line of succession would destroy the monarchy's credibility forever. They chose silence. They chose to be complicit in the lie to save the institution. This explains everything. It explains Megxit. It explains why they were allowed to leave. It explains why Charles has been so hesitant to strip them of their titles completely. They are holding a grenade, and if they pull the pin, everyone blows up. Let's take a moment to look at the tragedy of Prince Harry. Throughout Bauer's testimony, the prince sits motionless. This is a man who burned bridges with his father, his brother, and his country. He wrote a book attacking his own blood. He starred in a Netflix series portraying himself as the protector of his family. Bauer describes Harry not as a villain, but as a victim of a psychological kidnapping. He paints Harry as a man trapped in a glass cage of lies. Harry believed every word. He believed he was fighting racism. He believed he was fighting for privacy. He never stopped to ask if he was actually fighting to protect a secret that wasn't his. The devastation on Harry's face in that courtroom is the realization of a wasted life. If Archie is not his biological son, then every sacrifice Harry made was for nothing. He gave up his military titles, his friendships, and his heritage to raise another man's child in a foreign country. Bauer looks directly at Harry and delivers a line that feels like a physical blow. The truth doesn't care about your feelings, Prince Harry. It only cares about biology. Harry's isolation in Montecito suddenly makes sense. The reports of him living a separate life, the sadness in his eyes during public appearances, it's the look of a man who subconsciously knows something is wrong, but is too terrified to face it. But now, in courtroom 7, he can't look away. Now you have to ask yourself the question that defies all logic. If Tom Bauer is lying, where are the lawyers? Meghan Markle is a woman who sues everyone. She sued the Mail on Sunday over a letter. She sued regarding photos of her son. She has a legal team on retainer costing millions of dollars a year. Yet Tom Bauer has been publishing these theories and now stating them under oath, and the Sussex camp has been silent. In the legal world, silence in the face of such a damaging accusation is often viewed as an admission. If you call a mother a fraud and claim her child is illegitimate and that mother says nothing, the world starts to wonder. The only way to shut Tom Bauer up instantly would be a public DNA test, a simple swab done by an independent lab. If they did that, and it proved Harry was the father, Tom Bauer would be ruined. He would be bankrupt, disgraced, and likely in prison for perjury. Meghan would win. She would be the ultimate victor. So why hasn't she done it? Why allow these rumors to fester for years? Bauer argues that they cannot produce the DNA evidence because it simply doesn't exist. They are banking on the fact that the royal family is too dignified to demand a test publicly, and that the public will eventually get bored and move on. But they calculated wrong. They didn't count on a man like Bauer risking it all to bring the truth into the light. This goes beyond celebrity gossip. This is a matter of state. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor is currently listed in the line of succession. He technically has a claim to the British throne. If Bauer's testimony is proven true, this constitutes treasonous fraud. It means a child with no royal blood has been inserted into the lineage of kings and queens. It means the British Parliament has been misled. It means the Church of England has been mocked. Bauer tells the court that this is the greatest constitutional crisis since the abdication of Edward VIII. He demands that Parliament intervene. He calls for the Succession Act to be triggered, forcing a biological verification of all heirs. The implications are terrifying. It would mean stripping a child of his identity. It would mean rewriting history books. It would mean the total exile of Harry and Meghan, not just from the family, but from the country. The royal family is playing a dangerous game. King Charles and Prince William are trying to keep the monarchy afloat, but this anchor is dragging them down. Bauer warns that if they don't cut the line soon, the whole ship sinks. If you think the timeline of overlaps was damaging, what Tom Bauer revealed next was the nail in the coffin. We've talked about physical movements, flights, hotels, and dates. But in the modern age, the most dangerous secrets aren't kept in diaries. They are kept in the cloud. And Tom Bauer, with his ruthless legal team, managed to subpoena what he calls the digital vault. The courtroom fell deathly silent as Bauer described a series of encrypted communications recovered from a server allegedly used by Meghan under a pseudonym during the early days of her relationship with Harry. Bauer claims these weren't just casual chats. They were negotiations. He read aloud an email draft dated late 2016, a time when Meghan was publicly swooning over her new prince. The subject line, the contingency plan. The contents of this email allegedly directed to a close associate in Los Angeles, possibly connected to Trevor's circle, detailed anxieties about the royal relationship failing. But it was one specific line that made the entire gallery gasp. The email read, "I need to know if the door is still open. If this falls apart, I can't go back to zero. I need to know my history isn't erased." Bauer paused, letting those words hang in the air like toxic smoke. He turned to the jury and asked the devastating question, does this sound like a woman blinded by love, ready to commit her heart and soul to the British monarchy? Or does it sound like a woman keeping her options open, ensuring that her past, her connection to Trevor, remained a viable lifeline? This digital trail destroys the love at first sight narrative. It proves calculation. It proves that while Harry was falling in love, Meghan was hedging her bets. And if she was keeping the door open to Trevor emotionally and professionally, is it so hard to believe she kept it open physically? While the courtroom in London was descending into chaos, a very different scene was unfolding 2 miles away at Buckingham Palace. Sources deep within the household describe the atmosphere in the king's private quarters not as panicked, but as eerily grim. King Charles and Prince William were reportedly watching a private feed of the proceedings. For years, we have heard rumors of the rift between the brothers. We were told William was cold, unwelcoming, and paranoid about Meghan's intentions. Harry painted his brother as the villain who didn't understand true love. But as Tom Bauer laid out the evidence of the overlap and the paternity questions, the mood in the palace shifted from anxiety to vindication. Insiders claim that when Bauer revealed the details of the genetic timeline, Prince William didn't look shocked. He looked resigned. This was the "I told you so" moment that no brother ever wants to have. It is whispered among courtiers that William had raised these exact concerns in 2017. He had allegedly asked Harry to slow down to vet Meghan's background more thoroughly, to ask the hard questions about her past ties. Harry took that advice as an insult. Now, seeing the evidence laid bare in a court of law, it appears William's caution wasn't prejudice, it was protection. The tragedy for Charles is even more profound. The king is watching his son's life disintegrate on live television, but the palace machinery is already moving. The men in gray suits are no longer protecting the Sussexes. They are preparing the firewall. If the DNA test is forced by the courts, and if the result is what Bauer suggests, the palace is ready to cut the cord completely. There will be no half measures. The titles, the line of succession, the counselor of state status, it will all be erased. They are preparing to treat Harry not as a prodigal son, but as a victim of a fraud so massive it threatens the crown itself. Let's go back to Harry in that courtroom. As the testimony dragged on, observers noted he seemed to be disassociating, staring blankly at the bench. What was going through his mind? Perhaps he was replaying the birth of Archie in May 2019. In his own book, Spare, Harry described the birth scene at Portland Hospital in bizarre detail. He talked about using the laughing gas intended for Meghan to calm his own nerves. He described the atmosphere as chaotic, surreal, almost blurry. At the time, readers laughed at the anecdote, but under the glare of Bauer's accusations, that memory takes on a sinister new light. Was the chaos intentional? Was Harry kept in a fog, distracted, medicated, and overwhelmed, so he wouldn't ask the right questions? Bauer suggests that the doctor's refusal to sign the birth announcement wasn't just a bureaucratic snag, it was a protest. They knew the timeline didn't add up. They knew the biological markers were confusing. Harry, in his naive bliss, just saw a healthy baby and a happy wife. He didn't see the glances exchanged by the medical staff. He didn't understand why the birth certificate had to be amended months later to change Rachel Meghan Markle to Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Bauer argues that name change wasn't about status. It was a legal maneuver to make the document harder to challenge in international courts. Every oddity, every break in protocol, every unique choice the Sussexes made about Archie's birth is now being re-examined as a piece of a cover-up. And Harry is realizing he was the only one in the room who didn't know the script. As Meghan flees the courtroom in tears, ignoring the shouts of the press, and Harry sits frozen in his chair, a man destroyed by truth, we are left with a terrifying reality. The fairy tale was a nightmare in disguise. Tom Bauer has opened Pandora's box. He has placed the evidence on the table. The hotel receipts, the flight logs, the testimony of palace staff who were forced to stay silent for a decade. The picture is complete, and it is ugly. But the story isn't over. The ball is now in the court of the Sussexes. They have two choices. They can provide the DNA test and prove the world wrong, or they can continue to hide in Montecito, letting their silence confirm everyone's worst suspicions. The executioner has swung his blade. The facade has crumbled. And for Prince Harry, the man who wanted to save the world, he couldn't even save himself from the truth. This is the biggest scandal in modern royal history, and we will be here for every update. Now, I need to know what you think. Do you believe Tom Bauer's testimony is the smoking gun? Or do you think this is a cruel attack on a family trying to live in peace? Should King Charles force a public DNA test to protect the throne? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button because when the next piece of evidence drops, you do not want to miss it. The truth is coming, and it cannot be stopped.